Hello, I am the review tuber, and I'm back for another review. Today, I will be an Anituber because I am reviewing the movie I just got done watching. Ta-da! Well, let's see if we can get a wide shot while still being able to hear me talk. That is Gundam the Origin 5. Had its pre-released a couple months before it came out, and once it came in, I shelved it for a little bit because I like to I like the anticipation of things, and I anticipated watching that movie. So, being able to enjoy the anticipation, I put it off a little bit longer, but also I was watching the first 4 Gundam Origins over again with my wife. I never quite made it, so I ended up watching this one myself. So, for those of you that don't know, Gundam the Origin series is based off a manga that is a retelling of the original Gundam series. It had started adding a lot more backstory and between story for a lot of the little bits of the original show that seemed to be missing. For example, the backstory for Char. You can kind of tell there's some there, and some story between him and Sayla, but you never really told much of what it is. Well, the manga kind of went in depth with a flashback to before things happened in the anime, the original series, that is. Well, this is taking those parts and putting them together, letting you know, starting with the beginning of the spark of the war, which coincides with Char being a child and Sayla being a child. Or their original names get changed a lot throughout the film as they're trying to hide themselves. I'm not going to go too far into the story because I mostly just want to review this film. Now, this takes place after the war is officially started. Some battles start to break out, and Char, who had been put on administrative leave for reasons relating to the movie number 3, is now back in action. They had a nice little scene with a lot of the cast of the heroes of the original show, Amuro, Kai, Shiden, and Hayato, the group. They developed the story with Sayla. They developed the story with all the characters, basically. They didn't really have a focus. They just kind of went from one to the other. And their stories kind of joined together into the beginning of the all-out war. That is the 1-year war. But the original show kind of just starts with the war is already happening. It's already gone through a few phases. And it starts when Amuro, the main character of that show, gets involved, which is when his colony that he lives in gets attacked. Well, this is going before that, showing how this war started. Anyways, the first thing that always sticks out with especially these Gundam series is the superb art and animation. Gundam's become a huge franchise, a lot in part to... Let's see if I lower my camera here. That might help. Due in large part to merchandising. They sell a lot of models, they sell a lot of books and figures and everything basically branded. I just saw a branded bean, what do you call those? Red bean buns. But anyways, having such a high budget, they go ahead and pour a lot of it into this, make it look great. The colors look great, the animation, the movements look great. It's really not skimped at all. Well, it helps too that it's a movie or OVA, depending on how you see this. So it doesn't have to stretch that budget over a long period of time. It can condense it in basically, I mean, this is the 5th of 5, but they've come out over a long period of time, and assumably they've been able to use the budget from the last one or the profits from the last one into the budget of the new one, so they can keep that budget high. Whereas with regular anime TV shows, they basically have the budget to make the whole season's worth on that one budget before they receive really much of the profits from it. Which, I mean, that's a simplification. It's not really in detail how it works, but that's a simplification. But I liked how there's a lot of specific scenes, dramatic points where it will really go into good detail into drawing animation, getting a lot of the emotions onto the faces of the characters, focusing in on specific things, like maybe slowing down a gun being shot to give it more dramatic pause. Really, the direction of this and the production of this, just some of the best there is right now. I would suggest, if nothing else, to watch it for that. Granted, I don't know if I would just jump into number 5. Even just starting with Origins 1 is hard to do because you don't have the backstory. But it's not impossible because this is the backstory. It's just, it kind of does assume that you've seen the original show before. You don't have to, but it helps a lot understand of what's going on. I guess it'd be like watching Star Wars Episode 1 through 3 before seeing the original trilogy, or watching the new films before seeing the old stuff. There's stuff in there that really calls back. You don't have to know it, but it helps. So something to go along with the animation and art is the camera work. Granted, it's not an actual camera moving, but when you're making animation, it is like a regular movie. There is an actual camera, and you can animate the scene where the point of view is to make things more dramatic, more interesting, and they do a great job of that in this. That isn't usual. A lot of times you'll have a lot of still frames, still shots, static shots, because it's easier to animate, it costs less money, because if you're going to rotate around someone, you have to animate each degree, unless you have it in 3D CG, 3D CG animation, in which case it's a lot easier, I guess. And there's some of that in here, but it isn't all like that. Mostly just mobile suits are in 3D. Sometimes the environments are in 3D. It's colonies and spaceships, etc. Which is another point I had in here. I think they do a good job with the 3D. They combine it well. It doesn't really stand out as being 3D. The way you can tell it's 3D is that really it's always in motion, whereas 2D animation will have stop and goes every couple of frames, so it's not quite as smooth. Plus, like I said, it's more expensive to constantly be animating somebody moving, so that's why it's just not as fluid or animated as CG is. CG costs the same to have someone moving as it does to not have someone moving, and naturally we're all almost always moving. There's not really much of a time where we're just standing completely still like a robot with only our mouths moving. But 2D animation can get away with it because it's close enough to real life. People will get bugged by CG 3D animation because it's moving so much and they're not used to it, even though it's more realistic. And that's a subject for a different time. As is, well, I have a lot of tangents I can go off to at different times, but right now I'm reviewing this movie, so back to topic. They did a good job of developing the characters here. They really, even just since the last several movies, you got to see Giron. He just grows more and more obsessed with winning the war. It almost seems like the Zabi family all have different roles. The elder Zabi, I guess, kind of wanted to lead the people and be kind of their king, not really just rule over them, but be someone that's the leader, someone they all look up to, someone who gets all the glory. Whereas Giron seems to just be obsessed with killing as many Earth Federation people as possible in quote-unquote winning the war. Whereas Dozel is more obsessed with individual battles and battle strength and just showing off his manliness. And I can go further into that, but they kind of do a good job of developing them. Dozel turns into more of a family man as he has a child, Minerva, which is a big plot point in Zeta and Double Zeta Gundam and Unicorn Gundam, really. This all plays off each other so well, which is why I like the franchise. But Euron, I guess, like I said, turns into more of a psychotic. Cresselia really didn't get much time here. She had kind of gone in the earlier films from someone who was a little more pure in sight, and then seeing that the family wasn't actually that pure, and then trying to turn into the kind of person she thought her father wanted, which was a little more aggressive, a little more ruthless. Anyways, Sayla didn't get a whole lot of time either, but you got to see that she's more of an adult, that she's trying to her humanitarian efforts to help people in time of war. Char, I didn't really like, well, I mean, you know, Char is Char. Char was being his normal cocky self. But there's a moment towards the end where he just seems to be kind of delusional. I don't know if he's supposed to be on kind of an adrenaline high or something, but he's like, you know, taking down warships by himself, calling himself God and telling people to kneel before him. That's not really his character, really. Even earlier and later, he's more of a cool-headed, knows what he's doing, why he's doing it. And granted, the storylines here are intriguing because of their complicatedness, but Char likes space freedom, but doesn't like the Zombies. But the Zombies are furthering the space freedom, so he's kind of a spy inside the Zombies, despises them, but is still going with their plans. They developed that more, I guess, a little bit more. I just didn't like how they made him kind of go delusional at the end there. Something I like about Gundam in general, but especially here, is engineering aspects. They don't just do things. They really have good reasons for why they're doing them. Not as far as strategy for the war, how these operations would work, why they work. For example, when they were destroying a colony, putting gas in it, they kind of blotted out the windows with heat heat shielding liquid to kind of contain the gas better. This was something that they didn't really have to do, but there's little details like that I think are really interesting. Speaking of that colony and gas situation, I guess they could have gone a few ways. You don't just want to say it happened and then get on with it. It's a big dramatic moment, so you want to make it dramatic. And as far as the main characters goes, there weren't really anybody in the colony that is tied to the storyline, so they went ahead and created a tiny little sappy story where a boyfriend's guarding the girlfriend and dies because of the gas. It really, I mean, I see the point of it. I guess it kind of flopped for me. I don't like when they bring up little moments like that with unimportant characters and act like it's a big deal. At the same time, if they didn't show that, then it would seem a lot less impactful than it was. Sometimes I'll argue with myself, like I know why it happened, but I still don't like it. I don't know what they should have done better, but maybe they should leave it the same. It's just a little thing I'm going to pick on. I watch these movies in my front room with a pretty good stereo system, and a lot of time anime isn't super on the audio. I know in Japan a lot of times people don't have surround sound speakers or giant subwoofers for space reasons and because you don't want to annoy your neighbors. But in this case, even the Japanese was in 5.1 surround sound with good booming bass and just really good sound overall. Now, another thing I can get into later, but I watched this in Japanese just because I watched the first four in Japanese. And when I was rewatching it with my wife, I watched it in English. I do prefer the Japanese voices in this one, not all of them, but overall. And that isn't always the case. I'll get into it later, but in this case I watched it in Japanese. I liked it. see. This movie seemed a bit longer than the other OVAs. I don't know if that's actually true. I'd have to look it up. But, and I don't mind either. I was just pointing it out. I like Gundam. I like these shows. They can go on as basically as long as they want for real. If it's too long, I'll pause it and come back to it later. And that's basically all I got about it. I would give it... I mean, I guess I might be a little biased because I like Gundam, but I would have to give it 10 out of 10. I mean, I don't know how to make it much better. It's excellent in all departments. Sound acting, visuals, audio, direction, camera work. Just everything is superb. And I enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun. If you like Gundam, it's definitely for you. And if you don't like Gundam, I wouldn't start with number 5, but I would suggest getting to this at some point. Maybe running through the movies of the originals. They're a little faster. They cut out a lot of junk that was kind of unnecessary filler. And then diving into this would be a lot of fun and a little bit of a shock as it goes from, late 70s animation up to cutting edge animation of now. Anyways, thanks for watching again. Again, if you want to get in contact with me, leave messages or email me or anything else. If you want me to review something, if you just want to say hey and want to give me feedback, anything, I'll take it. Thank you, and please watch again.